Welcome to the OK Preps Extra Podcast. I'm Patrick Prince, joined as always by high school sports editor Barry Lewis. Barry, lots to get into today, but let's start with the story that's the most popular story on our website since it was posted last night. Shaker Reisig's dad being critical of Jenks and sort of explaining why Shaker is now at Union. Don't want to get in point by point what was into the column because you guys can go read it for yourselves and make your own conclusions. But after reading it, Barry, your takeaway was what?
I mean, I was just very interested. And I think it's the definitive story because until now, there'd been a lot of speculation. Believe me, I've heard a lot of wild theories on why Shaker left because this was an unprecedented move. A freshman who'd just been the starting quarterback of a team winning a state title, moving to its arch rival and basically doing it overnight at the end of spring practice. So there was a lot of wild speculation out there. A lot of it's so untrue. So this story is the definitive story and explains it all on why the move was made. And it's incredibly interesting reading. And that's basically why it was written. You know, some people wonder why we wrote the story. Well, that's why. We want to report the story. And now everyone knows why Shaker, the most high profile quarterback, arguably, in the area. I mean, Shaker and Chance Wilson, I rejoice, could label that why Shaker left from Jenks to Union overnight. So now the story is out there, and it's the definitive story.
Yep. So
it's news.
If you're, I can't imagine Shaker is thrilled to have this out a day before the Backyard Bowl. How do you think? Having watched him play for a season and a couple of games, how do you think this will get in his head any, or is he a gamer and it'll be fine? What's your thoughts on that?
Shaker has shown that with his play on the field, he is mentally tough. A freshman moving in. Remember, his first game as a starter for Jenks was the Backyard Bowl last year.
That's right.
A freshman starting quarterback for Jenks in his first starts in the Backyard Bowl. And he threw an interception on his first pass, but he bounced back from that. I mean, you think like, okay, if anyone's going to fold, it might be a person in this situation. But he came back, played a really solid game, went on to have a very solid season, helping Jenks win a state title. And so a freshman who can handle the pressures of being the starting quarterback of one of the biggest programs in the most successful program in the state of Oklahoma, if he can handle that and everything that so far had come with the move to Union, I expect that he will have a big game. His typical performance, which has been really solid in the first two games of this season as well, since moving to Union. I think he'll have a solid performance against his former team on Friday night.
And again, Barry, you and I are not going to delve into all the details of that column. You guys can. It's in the paper today. It's on the website now. You guys can go check it out and make your own conclusions. But interesting read, to say the least. Okay, let's talk about the game for a second. Is Jenks, what do you make of this game? Because, I mean, the Backyard Bowl, going in, you would think Union has the upper hand because, A, they're really, really good, and Jenks is really banged up. But as soon as you start to think that, I mean, the team that you think is going to win this game doesn't always win this game.
Yes, that was the case last year.
Exactly. So, I mean, with all of Jenks' injuries and all that's, how do you see this one?
As the coaches throughout the years, whether it's been Bill Blankenship, Alan Trimble, Kirk Frederick, Keith Riggs, they've all said that, expect the unexpected. So last year, everyone except yours truly picked Union to beat Jenks. So of course, I was the only one who picked Owasso to beat Bixby this year. So sometimes you hit those, and sometimes you don't. But anyway, most everyone thought that Union was going to win last year's meeting. In fact, most people gave Jenks no chance at all. And of course, in the following week last year, no one was giving Union any chance to beat Owasso. Union beat Owasso. So it is just very unpredictable. I think most everyone thinks Union should win this game because Jenks is so beat up. But again, Jenks their defense is playing lights out, even though it's been banged up.
Mm-hmm.
They've given up a combined total of, the defense has given up only 20 points this year. I mean, because one of the touchdown that it allowed to, well, no, the defense has allowed fewer than that. The defense has allowed 10 points, I guess. Wow. Because one of the touchdown they gave up last week was on special teams. So defense is playing lights out, even though it's banged up. And seem more banged up this week. Union's offense is playing lights out. So it's going to, but Jenks, they've got such a winning tradition. They are winners. It's the next man up philosophy. They are mentally tough. They're not going to concede anything. I do think that in order for Jenks to win, it's going to need to be a low scoring game.
Okay. What I was going to ask you too, Barry, is that, like, in your mind, this game will come down to what?
Whether Jenks' defense, as a sort of alluded to in the column today, and I think the coaches alluded to in the column when each was talking about what stands out or what most impresses you about the other team. For Jenks, for Coach Riggs, it was the Union offense. For Coach Fred at Union, it was the Jenks defense. So can Jenks's defense give its offense a chance to win the game? It's sort of like a baseball game. Can the starting pitcher give you a chance to win the game? Because I don't think Jenks is going to be able to score a lot of points. So it's going to need to win a game 14-7 like it did last week, in which there have been backyard bowls previously that hey, you think going in this is going to be high scoring, and then it's low scoring, and vice versa. So I think the key for Jenks is to keep it low scoring. I sort of figure that the game may turn out to be somewhat like the Union Broken Arrow game was last week, where Union jumped on them and then just grinded out in a very professional at a high school level type of effort, wound up winning 28-7. Just a very methodical, grinded out type of game where Broken Arrow didn't make it easy for them. They kept battling, but in the end, Union was just too much for them and grinded out the win.
Mm-hmm. Barry, I really enjoyed your column this week on Libby Adcock, former standout player at Oklahoma State, now doing some good things at Rogers. Tell us a little bit about that. A lot of the TPS teams struggle in football, so when one's kind of doing some good things, it's really nice to see. Tell us a little bit about what Adcock's doing over there.
Yeah, I mean, it really started last year under Coach Parker Childress, who stepped down after last year to go into administration. And because last year was their most successful year since 2014, they went 4-6. They got off to a good start, and then once district play started, then things didn't go as well, but still 4-6 was a step forward for the program. So Coach Adcock is building on that, making them believe they can take it even to a higher level. And a win over a prestigious program like Holland Hall that's won 2 consecutive state titles at their place and not giving up a touchdown against them, that's got to do a world of good for their confidence, because it's one thing for them, like last year, to post the wins they did against teams that aren't quite up there in the prestige as far as like a Holland Hall, but to do it against a team like Holland Hall, I think that can do them a world of good confidence wise moving forward into when they get into district play. Of course, the key now is, can they repeat that this week against Durant? And moving forward, do they not? not suffer a letdown, because that's a huge win. Huge win for Rogers. As I said, it's at least since 2000, it's their most important win since at least 2006, which is the last time they really qualified for the playoffs. They participated in the playoffs in 2020, but that's because everyone could. But 2006 was the last time they had a winning season and qualified for the playoffs. And arguably, this is their most prestigious win since at least the 80s. So that was huge for Rogers.
Absolutely.
So Coach Adcock comes from winning traditions. That helps. He came from a Owasso staff. He's played for OSU, where they expect to win. And so he's bringing that culture and mindset to Rogers.
Yep, absolutely. So nice segue, Barry. What's going on in Holland Hall?
Just they graduated a lot of seniors last year. Graduated a lot of their starters, and of course playing Lincoln Christian, which is a juggernaut at the 3A level, doesn't in the opening game does not help. It might have been helpful for them if Cordell Goolsby was still there, but he's who would have been their returning starting quarterback, but he moved on to Bixby. So they've just got a lot of new players, and they played Lincoln Christian. And obviously the Rogers game was a game they were to me, Lincoln was a solid favorite over Holland Hall. But the Rogers game would sort of be the bit of, even though Rogers has improved and they are a 5A school, you have to remember that too. That would be the game that would be concerning from a Holland Hall standpoint, that you just couldn't generate any offense.
Yeah.
Because the defense obviously played a lot better than it did against Lincoln Christian. So that's a positive, but they've still got some things on offense to work out. And I think this will be a team that will be a lot better in November than it is in September. And it's just a matter of getting some kids experience in Holland Hall football. Coach Tag Gross has been at the helm for over 20 years. Every year, sometimes just the way cycles go, that sometimes you're going to have a down year. You graduate all the seniors, and then it's sort of a rebuilding year the next year. And that's what we might be seeing this year. But I think by the time everything is said and done, then Holland Hall is going to have a winning record, and they'll be in the playoffs.
Sort of the same question about Booker T. Washington, Barry. You're preseason number 1. They're 0-2 now. What's going on there?
Now, what was I thinking when I picked them number 1? So as I say, sometimes you hit on picks and sometimes you don't, although I'm not giving up on Booker T. Washington, because we have to keep in mind that Del City is really good. Del City beat Choctaw. Choctaw thumped Edmond Santa Fe, and Edmond Santa Fe played Jenks down to the wire. Edmond Santa Fe is, while they're not you can't quite call them among the elite of 6A2. The last few years, they've been really close to the elite. They played in the championship game in 2020. So Del City's really good, but I would have expected, what surprised me is that Booker T's offense hasn't been doing anything the past 2 weeks. I thought the Bentonville West game was more of a surprise to me.
Who do they have this week?
And Booker T's gotten one of those things that we're going to talk about later, the rivalry games. They've got McLean this week.
Okay. Oh, that's right. They play on Saturday, right?
No, I knew the Del City game was just a tough matchup. But they'd played 2 hard-fought games against Del City the past 2 years. Del City was really pointing to this. Del City's really good. They've got some big-time players. Booker T's got some big-time players too. But Del City really wanted it. And it was a game you look at, Booker T outgained them by 100 yards. Del City only had 150 yards of offense. Booker T just did the little things that get you beat. Sort of like TU against Wyoming. TU did the little, failed to did a bunch of stuff that got it beat, even though it looked like it was the better team against Wyoming. So that's what happened to Booker T last week against Del City. They give up only 150 yards and they lose by a lopsided score. When you give up fumble recovery in the end zone for a touchdown, just like TU, stuff like that's going to get you beat when you play a team that's pretty even with you. So that's what happened to Booker T last week. I think we'll know more about Booker T after this week.
So Jenks and Union are obviously the headliner this week, Barry, but there are some other great rivalry games. Won't you kind of tell us a little bit about some of those?
Yes, of course, you've got the Folds of Honor Patriot Bowl, Owasso Broken Arrow, two great rivals. And however, they are going into the unfamiliar position of going into this game, which has traditionally been played this week, both being winless. So one of them is going to be really happy this week getting a W. Of course, you've got the storyline with Bill Blankenship coaching against his son, Josh. We went through that last year. So this will be the third time around for that. I know it's always a tough situation for the Blankenship family. They split 2 games last year. Owasso routed Broken Arrow in the Patriot Bowl, but then Broken Arrow got them back. After losing by 39 points in the regular season, Broken Arrow won in their playoff game, which is another reminder. It's a long way between now and November. Yeah. Teams get better. Teams get it figured out. So, yeah, it's obviously very important, even though for Broken Arrow or Owasso to get that first win, because you don't want to be 0-3. The season's not lost if you're 0-3, but it's really from a confidence standpoint, I think a big lift if you can get a win going into your district schedule.
Yeah.
And then speaking of the other games, Booker T at McLean. In these other games, we're going to mention in our football centerpiece for Friday's paper. They've got long history, these games, between close rivals. You got Booker T at McLean on Saturday afternoon. So if you want some Saturday afternoon high school football, this is a chance.
Yeah.
And this is a rivalry that's being revived for the first time in 17 years. So that is special. And then you've got teams that have been playing each other every year for a long, long time. Memorial against Edison in the Midtown Classic. And then you've got the 100th edition of the Highway 20 rivalry between as Skytook hosts Collinsville. So if you like rivalries, this is a good weekend to see a rivalry game. And another game that I'm looking forward to seeing how it turns out will be Beggs and Rejoice Christian. You've got a showdown of 2 of the top 3 teams in 2A, 2 of the top 25 players in the state, and 2 people who are very prominent in this week's all-world rankings of the area's top players. Beggs running back Red Martell, who's making his debut in the top 10 this week. Mm-hmm. And then we've got Rejoice quarterback Chance Wilson, who is number 1 overall for the first time in the rankings this week, our Tulsa World overall athlete of the year from the past school year. And Patrick, Chance is, we've got an interesting series coming up involving Chance. Why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, it's just something that you and I have talked about over the years from time to time about doing a player diary. And I got a chance to sit down with Chance yesterday. I drove out to Owasso and sat down with him. And so each week we'll probably do it by phone, but each week I'll sit down with him or we'll talk on the phone and we'll just kind of pick his brain about what's going on with him. And he will do a player diary. And hopefully we want to get a little insight into not only a good kid, but a star football player, and just try to get to know this kid a little bit. I'm always fascinated by star high school athletes because it's just football is a job. I mean, these kids, it's such a time demand on these kids, and to be able to balance, and they're kids, they're young, they're growing and they're learning, they're maturing, and all that they have to deal with recruiting and football and social life and academics. Just I'm sort of fascinated by all that, what they do in their free time. So hopefully I can kind of give readers a sense of what's that like through his eyeballs. So like I said, we sat down yesterday. It'll be in the paper tomorrow. It'll be online sometime this afternoon, tonight, and then going forward, he and I will check in with each other every Sunday. And I think, Barry, you said that will print probably on Wednesdays. Is that right?
Yes, for the most part, yeah. And
he and I will be checking in through the football season. He's a mid-roll, He and I were talking this yesterday, and I made the same mistake, a mid-year enrollee at Montana State. So he's a multi-sport star, as you know, Barry, and he's not going to do basketball or run track his senior year. He's going to enroll mid-year, and so we'll catch up with him through that till he leaves for Bozeman.
Yeah, that's what's impressed me so much about him and why he was our athlete of the year this past year, because in an era where there's more specialization, athletes focusing on just one sport, and understandably so in a lot of cases. I can take either side of that argument, although I like seeing athletes being encouraged to play more, or allowed to be played more in one sport and doing that. That's what really impressed me, because as you said, football, that's a full-time job. And besides bouncing his work as a student, but he would go right from football immediately to basketball, play at a high level there, and then go on to track, perform at a high level there. And that's one of the reasons, that's a huge reason why he was our athlete of the year this past year. I was glad that it worked out that way, because that was his last year where he was going to be doing all those sports in the year, because as you said, he's going to be graduating at mid-year and moving on to college next January.
Yeah, and he was a really good kid. He was very thoughtful, very respectful, well-spoken kid. Really enjoyed talking to him. So this will hopefully readers will get a kick out of this and enjoy it. On that same note, Barry, we have part 2 of our following Cole Adams series that Bill Haston is writing. Obviously hate to see what happened to Cole, but we're going to kind of stick with him through the rehab process, and we'll be checking in with him from time to time. And from talking to Bill Haston, the plan is still Alabama. He's spoken with Nick Saban, and apparently Saban said this changes nothing and we're all good. And, so anyway, we'll have part 2 of that in the paper tomorrow.
Yes, and it's really encouraging talking to Bill and giving me a little sneak preview of what the installment's going to be on Friday, that Cole is still, even though he's not playing, still very much involved with the Owasso football team, wanting to help out however he can. And it's not the season that he or any of us envisioned for him, but he still wanted to make the most of what he can do. He wanted to make the most out of it. So I think it'll be really interesting to read on Friday.
Yeah, for sure. Barry, anything else on your mind?
Well, that we covered quite a lot. I think that'll do it for this week.
All right. Well, we appreciate you joining us. You can download us for free on Google, Apple, or Spotify. And Barry and I will be checking in next week. And great weekend of games. We'll have plenty to talk about next week, Barry. So look forward to that. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. See you next week.